Hello and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Guernsey podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Ashplant. In this series, we speak to global leaders shaping the future of green and sustainable finance, drawing on Guernsey's internationally recognised expertise in the sector. Today will be more funds focused. Guernsey oversees more than £1 trillion in the island's investment sector and more than £280 billion in regulated AUM. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by the directors of the newly founded Fund Foundry, a new 12-month programme structured for emerging managers ready to launch their own fund. Today, we are joined by Dirk Bischof, Rebecca Booth, and Justin Sykes, here to discuss how the programme has been created to support first-time managers to establish themselves. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast. Fantastic. So why don't we start with introducing yourselves, and can you tell us a bit about your respective kind of careers to date?
Sure. For the last 15 years, I've spent most of my time helping founders grow and scale their businesses through various programs, idea stage, startup growth, build a fund around it, and that's been the last couple of years. And now, having relocated to Guernsey and supporting emerging managers, I'm super excited to be working with Rebecca and Justin.
And I spent probably the first 10 years of my career working at the intersection between private wealth and economic opportunity. So working with foundations, family offices on deploying capital to achieve defined social impact as well as commercial return on investment. And then subsequently over the last 10 years now have taken that into a private business where we're advising both fund managers and LPs on deploying capital to achieve positive impact for planet and people, as well as generate commercial returns on investment.
And I've been a non-executive director in the investment funds industry with actually 20 years experience in that sector. For the past 15 years, I've been specifically focusing on sustainability and funds that provide capital through to various projects. And for the last 8 years, I've been on the Sustainable Finance Council in Guernsey. I've got a qualification actually from Cambridge on sustainability business management and a master's degree in corporate governance. So what I'm actively involved in really is promoting good governance and values-driven decision-making, which really feeds into sustainability.
Brilliant. So let's jump straight into things. Justin, how is the Fund Foundry going to be supporting investment into sustainable finance and like sustainable outlets?
Well, frankly, our applicants are doing all the work for us. I think 90% of the 70 plus applicants so far to the Fund Foundry, bearing in mind we've got a number of weeks left to go before the window closes, have indicated that their funds have an impact thesis. Basically, what that means is, as part of their investment strategy, they're seeking to achieve certain social, climate, or broader environmental goals alongside delivering a financial return on investment. So that's brilliant. That's a great start. But I think what also is really exciting for us is this aligns so well with Guernsey as a funds jurisdiction and our reputation and a track record as a sustainable funds hub. And that's driven by our unique regulatory framework for green funds, and then more recently for natural capital. So I think a lot of these funds that are coming through are hopefully going to go on to then seek the funds label on either the green track or the natural capital track, which is great news. And I think surrounding that is a network of specialist service providers and advisors that understand sustainable finance and can help them on that journey.
Excellent. So what is it about Guernsey as a jurisdiction that makes the island sort of the perfect home for the Fund Foundry, but also for emerging managers as a sort of collective?
Well, I think there's sort of four main reasons why Guernsey is such a good jurisdiction. I mean, if you compare it to other jurisdictions, for example, Luxembourg, you've got an actual saving of about €3 million over the life of the fund. Now, that's really important when you're a first-time fund manager. It means you're looking after your investors. It means that your costs are lower. And it really does show how Guernsey can support that emerging manager side. What's really important also for investors is for emerging managers is their access to investors. And Guernsey's got a really good reputation for good due diligence, good corporate governance, and investors really recognise Guernsey as a safe jurisdiction. The other reason is its private investment fund. That really enables funds to launch within one business day. So that means that emerging managers have that flexibility of being able to use a regime which suits their needs. And then lastly, and this is sort of a really important point, Guernsey is internationally recognised as being credible and flexible and suitable for institutional capital and emerging managers. And that's not just for first-time fund managers, actually. It's helpful that emerging managers know that they can be on a growth path in Guernsey as well. So we have not just first-time fund managers, 30 million venture capital funds in infrastructure, in private credit, in private equity funds, but we've also got multi-billion pound fund managers here as well. So we've got that whole range of fund managers that choose Guernsey to domicile their funds.
Definitely. And, as a fund manager going out and spinning off on their own or sort of setting up for the first time, what are some of the key challenges that they sort of, typically come up against, Dirk? What are the typical sort of barriers to entry for them?
I think there's a number of barriers, and often fund managers look at what they might have done in the last couple of years, the last decade. I think one thing is they have to understand, and often they know setting up their first fund, that's a decade-long activity. If you then think about Fund 2, Fund 3, you're talking multiple decades that you're going to be spending on your own fund with your partners, with your investors. So whilst most emerging and first-time fund managers have nailed their thesis, often they might be lacking the support network and the ecosystem around them that will really support them. And I think that's something that we've brought together with the Fund Foundry in Guernsey. It's really an ecosystem of providers and supporters that will really rally around an emerging manager. So that's one, the lack of an ecosystem. Often you might have emerging managers who are technically very adept, they understand investing, but as a manager, you have to go out there and you have to market your fund. There's a whole new skill set that has to come around these emerging managers as well. We have talked a little bit about the cost wall that will face you when starting a fund, understanding your cost basis from an internal and from an external perspective. That's definitely something. And again, being able with the Fund Foundry to, especially in that first year, offer the support that we now have put together around the services voucher and cost reductions across our service providers, that can really make a material difference to somebody getting their emerging or first fund off the ground. And it's also a credibility gap. And I've seen this in the last 15 years with founders taking part in incubators, accelerators. You all of a sudden get the support that we engineer around somebody that will then be able to go out and say, I have worked with this program, I have worked with these providers. And it's almost like, I wouldn't say it's a blank stamp of approval, but having gone through a program like that will definitely add to your credibility, and not to speak about the network and access that you can get.
Yeah, certainly. So let's get into the nitty gritty, I suppose, of what it looks like in practice. Can you talk us through how the Fund Foundry will work in terms of, I guess, obviously it's structured as a non-profit initiative, it's a charity structure, but what does the sort of 12-month horizon sort of look like from the sort of perspective of that manager as well? What's the mechanics look like?
Great. So we're cantering towards the close of the application window. We're hopeful we'll receive around 100 applicants. They will be screened down primarily using the Guernsey Financial Services Commission fit and proper criteria to 20 really strong applicants. They'll be invited to Guernsey in September for 48 hours, where there will be a process where they will pitch to an established panel of fund managers, and ultimately we will have our inaugural Fund Foundry cohort of 5 managers. Those 5 managers are then entered into a year-long program of support. And I think the best way of describing the program of support is breaking it down into 2 components, one financial and the other technical. So on the financial side, and Dirk has hinted at this already, off the bat, each winning manager will receive a £25,000 a voucher, redeemable against professional services fees for the first year of fund launch and operation. And the professional services categories are law firms, fund administrators, and then audit firms. What's really important to get across is each of those 3 professional service categories have, especially for the Fund Foundry program, offered to discount their fees against the typical commercial rates. So what you're actually getting is a £25,000 voucher, which is then you're able to then apply that against discounted fees, and then combined with other benefits of the program, such as a bank that we have on board that is providing a free account opening for GPs. We're looking conservatively at about £75,000 of cost savings versus what would be the standard commercial fees if somebody came outside of the Fund Foundry program. And as Dirk mentioned, that's pretty material for a first-time manager. So that's the financial part. And then on the technical side, we've got a number of elements which we think, again, are almost just as valuable as the financial component. So one is that we have a GP mentor program, where we've got a number of GPs that are established GPs. Their structures in Guernsey, but they're all on their Fund 2s, 3s, and 4s. And what's really important here is that they were a fund manager, a first-time manager 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and they have the scars to show for it. They've got a really good understanding of what worked, what didn't work, and they can provide that really important guidance and mentorship to these new managers on what not to do, what IT system to avoid like the plague, what decisions to make and not make. And we think, as I say, that is huge intangible value. And then I'm personally really excited about work we're doing building an LP track to our program. So we have a number of relationships with family offices, including some on island, and other LPs such as a private bank we've been talking to, where it's interesting that they don't see this as an incubator, they see as a fund incubator, they see this as a curated GP platform. So they're saying, well, look, you might get 100 first-time managers coming through this program, and a large number of those with sustainability credentials. These are precisely the type of managers that we are looking for, or our clients are looking for, as prospect investments. So they've come and said, well, could we not just look at the 5, but actually maybe the 20 finalists, and can we consider these on a first right of refusal basis for consideration as a potential investment prospect? And I think what's also really exciting is that, a number of conversations we've had with family offices, they've said, well, yeah, we could do the standard LP ticket, but actually it would be really interesting if these managers could consider an investment position in the management company. So in effect, GP staking. Or could these managers consider co-invest opportunities? So on our application form, we've actually asked the managers, is it just an LP ticket you're interested in, or are you open to other investment opportunities? And I think through this, we can really start to get a flywheel going between LPs and GPs that make this program a really sort of sticky, exciting program.
So that's, very interesting. So what's the, if you're a manager looking at this opportunity and keen to kind of, I guess, position yourselves in line for that funding, but also the ancillary sort of mentorship benefits that kind of come along with being involved in the scheme, what could a usual manager coming to Guernsey look for in terms of the structuring opportunities, Rebecca? What are the sort of wraparound products that Guernsey offers by way of sort of structuring per se?
Yeah, so Guernsey's got a well tested amount of structuring available for funds. And I think that's a really important point to make. There's protected sale companies, there's companies, and there's GPLPs that can be all private investment funds. And that private investment fund is a unique opportunity to be able to have a regulated fund which is perfectly aligned with what's required as an emerging fund manager. There's the opportunity to actually be able to launch your fund really quickly under the private investment fund. And it's really straightforward application as well, with flexibility. One of the main things for it is really that there's no prescribed minimum size of the fund, and also there's not a limited number of investors. So you can have small ticket investors coming into the fund, which is crucial really when you're a first time fund manager.
So that's almost a brilliant route to market for this kind of scheme. Yeah. Excellent. So, so sort of shifting gears slightly, what are the sort of, I guess, the key areas of support that participants can receive? I mean, I guess Justin touched on this in terms of the mentorship, but is there anything sort of beyond that, Dirk, that sort of, those prospective candidates can sort of look forward to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think one of the most undervalued but really high value things is the cohort itself. I've seen this over a decade or more, that founders and emerging managers who are going through a program at the same time, they will often become each other's support network. In the good times and bad times, they'll be able to share tips and tricks of what they see is working, share approaches, share contacts. And that's really something, the cohort itself, together with the mentors and the providers we're bringing together, that will be its strongest support network for questions, comments, thoughts, challenges. So that's something that we really hope for. And then, of course, as the program gets going year in year, as the program gets going month in, month out, we will then add to any banks of questions that emerging managers have, share answers with everybody that is in the program, and it really becomes a collaborative effort to get somebody from, I have an idea, I might have a couple of initial LPs already that might be interested, to getting emerging managers to first close more quickly, having fielded all the questions that emerging managers will have. So yeah, beyond the voucher, the mentoring, support with service providers, it's the cohort themselves that really, we think, will do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, sure. And then, I mean, Justin, you touched on earlier this idea that sort of Guernsey has, in effect over the last decade, sort of carved out a leadership position globally as a sort of, a leader in sort of sustainable finance, developing the pioneering frameworks we saw, and you touched on in particular, so the Guernsey Green Fund, the Natural Capital Fund, kite marks, and sort of helping to channel sort of capital towards real world sustainable outcomes that align with the UN SDGs and so forth. Do you expect this sort of the support of the managers pursuing these sort of sustainable minded strategies? Will they be sort of looking to these kite marks as clear markers to sort of align with and therefore value themselves against? What role do these sort of kite marks, I suppose, play in sort of the wider growth and development of this sort of emerging manager piece?
I think particularly for first time and emerging managers, these types of standards and certifications are extremely powerful in terms of validating their commitment and integrity around their investment strategy. I think the world is moving from a tell me model to a show me model, and there's increasing requirement from sustainability focused investors that a fund manager is able to actually sign up to international standards and frameworks, and that those standards and frameworks require um, evidence of the execution of investment intent. And it's not just, we've taken your money and we have, this is our broad generic investment thesis. It's, we have a sustainable investment strategy, capital has been deployed, and we're able to evidence the outcomes of that investment through real data, and that data can be communicated back to managers, and frameworks that require managers to align with sustainable investment taxonomies, and require those managers to report back to investors on a periodic basis on the actual use of proceeds or the actual impact of those sustainable investments are critical. So I think absolutely the regulatory regimes that we have in place in Guernsey for sustainable investment, particularly for managers that are building their LP base and building their position in a competitive environment, are absolutely critical.
And if I could just add as well, the fact that the Guernsey Green Fund has been in place for so long, and the service providers have been working with sustainability funds for so long, demonstrates that Guernsey is an excellent jurisdiction for building emerging manager funds in that area.
Yeah, definitely. What are some of the maybe other sort of ancillary services that Guernsey can provide? Regular listeners might be quite familiar with this, but what are the sort of offers in terms of sort of admin, audit? What do those sort of other sort of services look like that can support that those are managers that come onto this scheme?
Yeah, sure. So Guernsey prides itself on its relationships, and that's what's really important actually about the service providers here. So you're not just a number on a list when you become a fund manager in Guernsey, you're a valued customer. And I think that's a really important way of recognizing how Guernsey stands out. And Guernsey also stands out because we have a huge amount of experts who are living on Guernsey, who are absolutely passionate about what they do. And you'll absolutely see that as a fund manager coming to Guernsey, that is the case. And that's different from, as I hear, in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if I may add as well, I think it's all about piecing together a really comprehensive network of support. And included in that, I think, are some really interesting elements. So one is we have a partner on the program that provides GP bridge financing. And I think particularly for early stage managers, that the time that it takes typically to get to first close over the last few years has taken longer and longer. And therefore, these specialist instruments that can be used to kind of bridge managers to get to first close all form part of the enabling ecosystem that help managers sort of overcome these sort of chicken and egg challenges that they often face.
Yeah, definitely. So just taking maybe a step back then, Dirk, what's the sort of, well, I guess when launching a new fund like this, what are the sort of factors that are critical and I guess the benchmarks that you consider to be sort of long-term success? I think there's the obvious ones, but what's the, in terms of sort of fitting within this kind of a mold or this sort of the Fund Foundry, what does that look like? Sort of long-term.
I guess you really want to have a right-sized foundation as you get your fund off the ground. From a structural perspective, you want to have a size of fund that is going to clear the hurdles in terms of costs, that where the GP or the manager gets rewarded appropriately. You want to really make sure you get it right in terms of your access to LPs right now as you get it off the ground versus what you still have to bring into the fund as you walk towards first close. So this right-sized foundation with the right legal partners, with the right fund administration partners, the right banking partners, the right audit partners, like getting the foundation right is really critical. And whilst we've seen a lot of, I would call them maybe neo fund admins that might be, in the US or in the UK that are able to offer an anonymized, tech platform where you can do a lot of these things. We think that, and as Rebecca already rightly said, the relationships are really critical as you get your first fund off the ground. Who are the people that you're going to be working with as you get the fund off the ground? That's something really, really critical. And also having credible partners from day one across fund admin, legal, auditing, that give the confidence to the investors that you know what you're doing, the people and partners around you know exactly what you're doing, and you're really getting to that first close in a very sensible manner. We're thinking, and Justin alluded to that getting to first close has been more challenging. We still think that with a credible, experienced manager, whether they're spinning out or setting up, a 12 to 18 month timeline is still something that is pretty realistic. We think you can somewhat shortcut this, working with the right people at the right time on your foundational work. And then really, for emerging managers, you have to really look at the time horizon of Fund 1, raising the money, deploying it, managing it. And then you have to be thinking about, like, what will Fund 2 look like? So, and again, structuring everything across this time horizon with the right people and the right partners around you from the very beginning is very, very different to signing up to an online program or signing up to an online platform that can do all those things for you to some degree, but it's like day and night, and you want to get those foundations right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. And so looking ahead then, Justin, what impact do you hope the Fund Foundry will have on the next generation of fund managers?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I'm really excited to see some of the prospect managers come through. And I think you alluded to it earlier. There's a couple of sort of typologies. You've got professionals working for asset managers and existing firms who are now sort of spinning off and creating their own shops. But we see another typology, which is the entrepreneur typology, where somebody has created a successful business, and that business requires financing of underlying entities, and their success has got them to a point that actually to grow and achieve their objectives, they need a permanent capital vehicle to do that. So they're growing. Their success is growing them into a fund, and we've got some really exciting prospects coming through around carbon removal technologies, around financial inclusion in sub-Saharan Africa, around space technologies, using remote sensing and GIS to monitor climate change, deforestation. And what gets me sort of out of bed every morning is to say, look, if these entrepreneurs were able to mobilize hundreds of millions into their vehicles eventually, what's the impact of that in terms of the underlying environmental, social, and climate issues that they're seeking to address through their investment theses?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, brilliant. Well, it's a fantastic initiative, and well done to you all for sort of bringing it all to the fore. And I think it's a fantastic example of Guernsey industry really innovating and taking the bull by the horns. So congratulations to you all and well done. Just to end, before I let you all go, if there's one message you'd like sort of aspiring fund founders and managers listening today to sort of take away from this conversation, other than obviously get involved, what would it be from each of you? If I could just start with you, Rebecca.
Okay, well, obviously apply. The window is open until the 1st of September, and the application form really makes you think about all the questions that you need when you're an emerging manager, because they're aligned with the regulation, they're aligned with what investors will be looking for. So it's a really good opportunity to make sure that your thesis and your whole idea is actually in place. So open that application form and get filling out the form.
And yourself, Justin?
I think the key message to say is that Guernsey is a fantastic destination for first-time managers. Guernsey is very well known for very large funds, billions of dollars of funds. But I think the message is, there's no size that's too small. And I think we're really open for those first-time managers with great investment theses, and we'd love to make Guernsey your home and grow with you. So, you become that next $1 billion fund in 5-10 years' time.
Excellent. And just to finish, Dirk.
Yeah, we're really excited to see first-time fund managers and emerging managers to apply to the program. it is a collective effort. You don't have to work it out all alone. Even through the application process, we provide some hand-holding if people have questions on that. And we exist to lower the barriers to get from idea to first fund and to first close through our collaborative effort across the whole partnership.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us on the podcast today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Brandon.
Well, thank you to the three of you for joining us and for helping to advance the conversation around sustainable finance as a core pillar of global finance and, of course, Guernsey as a leading global funds domicile. The Fund Foundry window for applications is open. If you miss this cohort, there will be more to come from the Fund Foundry. For prospective managers, it will only take 30 seconds to apply, and this gives you access to the FAQs and the ability to sign up to the webinars and drop in office hours. Links to the Fund Foundry are available in the description. And thank you to you for listening. If you enjoyed today's discussion, we have plenty more interviews for you to explore on our channel. We look forward to welcoming you back to the next episode.